the August 20th, 2024 meeting of the Ann Arbor Parks Advisory Commission. This meeting is being conducted electronically and will be broadcast live on CTN Cable Channel 16 and online at a2gov.org/watchctn. To speak at public comment, call toll-free 877-853-5247 or another of the published numbers on the agenda, and enter meeting ID 960-2086-1136. All right, with that, Josh, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bush, Commissioner Cavateo, Commissioner Kraut, Commissioner Marson,
I'm present in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner O'Connell,
here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Montague, Commissioner Perlowski,
Present in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Skyless,
here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Smith,
here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Radina,
here in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Watson.
Here in Ann Arbor.
You have a quorum.
All right. Are there any changes that anyone would like to request for the agenda? Seeing none, then we will move on to our first public comment. Public commentary. Please follow the instructions to raise your hand and indicate that you would like to speak. We allow 3 minutes per speaker. We do not respond in the moment to speakers, but we appreciate you taking the time to call in and share your thoughts with us. Do we have any callers?
No, we do not.
Okay. All right, next up then is approval of the minutes. Does anybody have any corrections or changes to the minutes or a motion to approve? Would anyone like to move to approve the minutes?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Hannah. Do we have a second? Thank you, Larry. All in favor of the minutes as written, please say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? Seeing no opposition, the motion carries. All right. So next up is presentations. And today we have a couple of topics that looks like Missy Stoltz is on the call. And she will be talking about OSI and the parks. And she's also going to be talking about the proposed sustainable energy utility that will be on our November ballot. So Dr. Stoltz, it's nice to have you here with us, and I will let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Chair Marson. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today. Thank you for making time. I'm going to try to make this painless and maybe even a little fun if humanly possible. So let's go. Let me just get this ready. Thank you for your patience. I am going to, just kind of as a little background here, I'm going to share this slide with you, and there's going to be a lot more about the collaboration that we have with parks and less about the sustainable energy utility, not because that's not critically important, but because I want to make sure you're going to get the slides, and I want to leave time for questions and the rest of your discussion. So let's see if this will work for me here. Josh, can you give me it's going to share this one screen, and I want to make sure it goes over when I full screen. Can you, instead of seeing about a community change grant, see the slides? No, you still see a community change grant. Well, I'm working on that in the background, everyone. We're going to apply for a grant later today. Let me try one more thing. Always fun. Don't you love when you're just limited? Here, we'll just do it here.
Yeah. There we go. That looks
see it full
good.
screen?
We
Yes.
see your.
No, you see the notes. Oh my gosh, you guys, working from home is so different than working from the office. What a treat, what a gem, what a jewel. Let me try one more thing. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. You're so beautifully patient.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You're not the first one.
Oh,
Yeah.
nor will I be the
Have these
last. What a
struggles.
gift.
Right.
Here we go. I think I'm going to figure this out. I'm just going to share it this way in this ugly format, and I will bear with me because this is just how this is going to go down. Let me close.
Yeah, that's fine.
Make this look better. We'll do it this way. So like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I just want to talk to you a little bit at the beginning about the relationship we have with parks, which is phenomenal. And I have incredible gratitude for everyone in the parks department, especially for our manager here today and his commitment to sustainability. So what I want to talk about is a little bit in terms of kind of meta, what that commitment looks like and how I'm lucky enough to get to work with Josh and team in a multitude of different ways. Then I want to tell you a little bit about what's happening on the ground in real time right now, just to hopefully get you excited and then maybe encourage you to go out and see some of these projects. And then I'll do a quick overview of the sustainable energy utility and just reminder, there's going to be more slides than I'm going to go through, but you're going to get those slides and please follow up with any questions, concerns, heartburn that you might be experiencing. So this is grants, which is super fun. Let's just say work underway. Look at this. This is so great. You could edit it in real time when you're with parks. Here are some of the things that we have kind of high level in process with our wonderful colleagues at parks. One, Josh and I meet every month. And as part of our discussions, we're identifying what's working and where there's strategic opportunities to do more work together, whether that's promoting our incredible park system and making sure we're activating different park spaces when we're doing sustainability-centered events, or whether that's pursuing new funding opportunities or addressing pain points that may exist in a park that has an intersection with sustainability. And there are lots that we uncover in those conversations. And then, of course, it's just a joy spending time with Josh. So we get to brainstorm a little bit about what it's like to support each other in the organization. One of the things I find really inspiring is that sustainability is a core tenet in parks work. So we do lots of things behind the scenes, like our capital improvements planning process, in which we talk to other departments like our buildings, and we're thinking about buildings, we're thinking about bridges, and we're integrating sustainability principles into those conversations and, kind of thinking a little bit differently about how we might approach building a bridge. But when we go in and talk with parks, it's almost like there's just not a huge need for sustainability staff to be in that room because the park staff already brings sustainability into the discourse constantly. They're always kind of pushing and thinking about ways that sustainability can be the one of the main drivers in our park systems. How do we, of course, sustain the parks that we have, but how do we really lean into the values around climate action, equitable access to make sure that everyone today and into the future can realize the benefits of our wonderful park system? That has led to really deep and meaningful collaborations across our various staff, kind of between Josh and I, but also as we look across the folks in the field doing the work. I get to hang out with Brittany sometimes, and so do some of my team members when we're talking about work at the Bryant Community Center, which is the image you see in the background here. I get to work with Scott Spooner as we're thinking about operational advancements that we may make at different sites and how we can save resources, financial resources, to reinvest into our park system. And so it's actually exceptional getting to work with the incredible team over at parks. And I mentioned before, we are really looking for more ways to lean into activating our park sites for sustainability-centered events. That may be talking about Liberty Plaza and how we could do more activities there, because we do in OSI, we run generally a community engagement event a week. Some weeks, I'll tell you what, September is pretty bonkers. If you haven't seen our schedule yet, you're going to get it soon. There's a lot that we have going on. And so how do we lean into these beautiful gems, the jewels in our system, our park system, to bring people together? We're lucky enough that most of us live next to a park. So how do we activate? And we did that as part of A20 week, where we had meetups with our elected leaders, thank you, council members, in our park system, because it was just much more accessible for people to get there. And then we certainly are looking at a lot of fundraising opportunities together and storytelling together. I'm going to tell you in the next slide some of the things we've been actually doing. You might know about them because you're PAC and because you're hearing about them, but most of the public doesn't. And so we need to make better use of our ability to tell stories and show what it looks like when the local governments, various units are working together for the shared values the community holds. Funsies. So here are some of the things that we have in action right now. And I'm going to show you pictures on the next slide. So this is just a higher level. We are doing a lot of solar installations. We are doing solar at every single major park site that has kind of operational uses, things that have infrastructure in which you could put solar, or there's a demand, electrical demand equivalent for solar. So that's our golf courses. That's Cobblestone, Fuller, Burr. That is looking at, the senior center, right? And the senior center is actually a space we invested significantly in to do solar energy storage and EV charging, because that's our next resilience hub in the community. And if you're not sure or familiar with the concept of resilience hubs, these are institutions, places that people already go for service. They already trust the programming or the entities that are running that space. So far, the Senior Center becomes our third. We have 3 resilience hubs: Northside Community Center, Bryant Community Center, and the Senior Center. That's exciting for us. These are also nodes. A simple way to think about it, these aren't emergency shelters. Emergency shelter, you activate only in an emergency for that purpose. A resilience hub works 365 days a week to keep providing critical programming or services for residents. That means even during a disaster, it keeps doing what it does. Sometimes you ask it to do more, but the point is there's no blurb, there's no disruption in service provision, because they are resilient. They are capable of providing that critical service. So a blue sky day and a really dark gray day, they're still providing the same service. Parks has been an incredible collaborator as we think about our resilience work across the board. We've been doing EV charging in our various park sites and thinking about how we do more of that so people can be charging, but also getting out and really enjoying these beautiful accoutrements that we have. We've started to explore geothermal. Geothermal at most notably in the Bryant neighborhood, where we're looking at a district geothermal system. So a geothermal field that's capable of providing enough thermal energy to heat and cool every single home, 262 homes in that particular neighborhood, plus the Bryant Community Center, plus Bryant Elementary School. That's a lot of thermal load, but we're using Arbor Oaks as one of the places where we could actually do the drilling, and you'll never know. Once we reseed it and we put the playground back, it looks exactly the same, but underneath it, we are providing safe, clean, and healthy power for an entire neighborhood that, oh, by the way, is more affordable than what we pay in today's rates. How we're applying for a grant for that, thanks to the incredible partnership with Parks. How do we do more of that? Right? How do we help utilize these beautiful assets, both the tap that we're familiar with and we activate, but also the incredible energy in the ground to make sure that everyone has access to clean, safe, healthy energy, broadly speaking. And then, of course, community engagement, really leaning in with each other to tell stories together and to show the parks really are a thing that people love in our community. And they do also seem to care quite a lot about sustainability. And so marrying those two concepts is really important. And I'll just share a little quick story that I shared this with Josh yesterday in our check-in. My daughter went to river camp last week. So she was at Gallup and she was having a great time. And my daughter is a feisty, beautiful 9-year-old. And she came home on Monday while we were leaving the park and she goes, "Mom, Gallup has solar." She was so very proud, right, that she saw it and I didn't see it. And I said, "I know, darling, we helped pay for it." And she rolled her eyes like 9-year-olds do and said, A20. And I was like, well, that's A20 and Parks hand in hand. But what happened after that was the part that I found the most startling and both exciting. The camp counselors said, "Oh, we noticed that we had solar at Gallup. How great is that?" And I said, "We were at Fuller today too. Did you see the solar installations at Fuller?" And they said, "We didn't." I said, "Oh, okay. Did you know that we're making investments in all of our park sites?" And they said, "We didn't." And I thought, that's fascinating, right? These are our counselors who are in these parks and they don't see it or know it. And if they don't see it or know it, that means a lot of our community members aren't seeing it and aren't drawing the connection that this is their local government working really in a connected way together to advance the values they hold. So I think we have a lot of work to do around storytelling, and I'm hoping you can help us do that. So here are just some of the images of what we've got installed throughout the community. We've got this little cover at Gallup that you can go walk. It actually provides nice shade. It's also providing the majority of the electricity that we need in the summer at Gallup. We've got wonderful carports at the golf courses, at the senior center, at Fuller. This is Fuller. It's a huge canopy. You can park underneath that, so you also get the benefit of shade, but it's providing a significant amount of the electrical need for the pool. And we're doing EV charging underneath. So those chargers are actually drawing power from that sun and the solar panels above them. What a really cool demonstration of how all of these technologies tie together. These are just some of the projects. You can see cobblestone right now if you go by. I think it's absolutely beautiful on the farm, on the barn itself. You can see Burr, what we've got going on. We've got wonderful, at certain angles, you can actually see the solar panels that are up. I think we've got just over a dozen different sites where we're installing solar and EV chargers throughout our park system. So thanks, Josh, for saying yes, when sometimes it's inherently easier to say no. So as we look forward, just going to end this section, we are really trying to find more and more ways to keep making these investments. Imagine, if you will, the summer where Parks has zero energy bill because we are powering all park operations with the sun or with geothermal. That's savings that the Parks Department can use for more programming to increase operational needs. This is powerful, and it's where the community goes. We are deeply connected to our parks, so it's a value statement to see sustainability manifest in our park system. I'm excited to see that happen, and we're continuing to push. We're looking at ADA and the ADA report that came in. How can we lean into more improvements in the site so everyone can access the benefits? Lots of really great things, thanks to Josh and team's leadership. I mentioned this previously. We're looking at how in Bryant, to start, in Arbor Oaks, we can use parks as anchors for community geothermal systems. And we're starting a study with Stantec to look at geothermal throughout the entire community, where there's viability, where there's not. And there could be opportunities to provide some of that heating and cooling load for our park systems as well. And so we're just starting to explore this. We're exploring it with the Ann Arbor Public Schools as well, and how we can lean into our community schools. Pretty exciting stuff. The resilience hubs we've talked about is well underway. We are doing some analysis. Josh and I and the chief spend some time in conversation thinking about Vets Park and Fire Station 3. There's a lot of needs there. It's also an area that's pretty vulnerable to power outages. So what can we do to kind of help maybe do a short-term solution while working towards a longer-term vision for that site? We're working on the farmers market. We have money set aside to do solar and power the majority of the farmers market through renewable energy. But of course, there's improvements being made on that site. So we're kind of figuring out that particular play. And then we're just getting these systems up now. So we're excited to track what the financial savings are. What are the benefits of these installations, which are brought to us largely thanks to two things: the Biden-Harris administration and the Inflation Reduction Act, where we've been able to use dollars from the federal government to pay for these installations, and the community climate action millage that residents voted for. These are tax dollars in both cases, one federal and one local, going to use back in our community and actually helping us save more money through recurring bill savings. And then, of course, you've got to tell us what you want to see, because opportunities are pretty endless. And I think that's one of the things that makes Ann Arbor such an exceptional place, is we have a lot of creativity and desire to lead on these initiatives. So I can't wait to hear what ideas you have. Josh, I can't see you, so I'm going to pause for a second and say, do you want to take really quick questions before I run into the SEU? Because it's kind of a little code shift here.
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
With that.
Yeah, I think that it would be fine. And then we'll have questions then. If everyone else is all right with that, then have questions at the end.
Okay, all right, ready? Okay,
Sure.
do a little like hat switch, same thematic area. Are we doing okay? Thumbs up, thumbs down, sideways? Okay, oh, Larry, thank you. I can see you. That was great. I really appreciate you. All right, let's code shift, and I'm going to do this one a little quickly. So I want to talk to you about the proposed sustainable energy utility that'll be on your ballot in November. Again, these slides we'll share after, and there is a bunch of information on the city's website, but let's just do some quick context. Every year, our office does a community-wide greenhouse gas emissions inventory to figure out, where are we? What emissions are we producing as a community, and where are they coming from? What sectors and what sources of the energy system are contributing to those emissions that we experience? What we know is that 40% of our community's emissions come from building electricity usage, and 70% are from the building as an entire sector when you integrate fossil gas usage to heat and cool water or spaces. So buildings are really large contributors in Ann Arbor to our greenhouse gas emissions. Now, this is a little bit different than what you might see at the national scale, where transportation emissions are the #1 source of emissions. We are doing a pretty good job of thinking about alternative modes and means of moving about the community. Still have a lot of work to do there, but it is a little different than the national story. And of course, we've got A20. I'm not going to belabor it. You know what it is. So we've got to find ways of reducing those emissions. Now, here's a moment of good news. A year ago today, I would have only showed you the chart that said 2030. And I would have told you as we're thinking about how we're going to green the electric system, which we've got a goal of powering Ann Arbor with 100% renewable energy. What I could tell you is there's a renewable portfolio standard in Michigan that requires utilities to power their grid with 15% renewables. Okay, so we're starting at 15%. And then we've got Ann Arbor Public Schools making commitments. The university just made some commitments, which aren't in this table, but would be given changes that have happened. We've got our dams that actually produce some electricity. And Ann Arborites are actually really large subscribers to the My Green Power program that DTE runs. Last check, we were the largest subscribers to that program of any community. So good job, Ann Arborites. You might have heard the ad from DTE saying they're helping us hit our goal by 30%. Let me just be clear, you're doing that. The utility isn't, that's you subscribing to that program. So good job, y'all. Well, last November, Michigan made an enormous step forward, and that's what you see on the second table. The governor signed, legislature passed, and the governor signed energy legislation that requires our utilities to power the electric grid with 50% renewable energy by 2030, 60% by 2035, and 100% by 2040. That's a really big step. That puts us ahead of places like California, right? This is a big deal. And everyone's figuring out exactly what this means and what this looks like. For us, what it means is we do our projections out to 2030. The gap I need to fill isn't an 80% gap anymore. The gap I'm trying to fill is a 27% gap, right? And I can unpack that if folks want to in more detail later. But this is a good news story, and it's really inspiring because that means every place across Michigan is going to see by 2030 a 50% clean energy portfolio in their electric grid, whether or not they have climate goals. That's just where Michigan has to move regulatorily. Just a few context things before I jump into the SEU. It's important to understand in Ann Arbor, in Michigan, we have something known as a Foot Act. And Ann Arbor, go back to 1890. In the 1890s, any governments that existed were struggling with two options. If they were going to provide electricity, they were either going to sign a contract for a private firm to come in and provide that electricity and outlay all the capital for whatever that infrastructure was, or they were going to stand up their own utility and do it themselves. We decided to hire a contract, and it was for street lighting. It was in 1892. We signed a contract for someone to provide street lighting, so forth. We get it. Great. Here we go. We're moving forward. Later, in I think 1930s, there was a bill passed, the Foot Act, that basically said a franchise, which is the right to serve, that's what we granted to a streetlight entity in 1892. The Foot Act said that franchises have to be negotiable, with one exception. They said if you signed a franchise before we passed this Foot Act, it's in perpetuity. We signed a franchise very early. Our electric franchise has been ruled in perpetuity. So if you ever hear, I spend a lot of time with my peers around the country, talking to them, thinking about strategy. Minneapolis is negotiating a new electric franchise. That's great because they can. Every few years, they come, they negotiate what their terms and services might look like, what the energy provision is going to be. Maybe they're going to get an actual rebate from that utility. Zero potential in Ann Arbor. We can't negotiate that franchise. Our franchise is with DTE for electric. However, the Michigan Constitution preserves the right of cities and villages, and I want to be explicit, cities and villages. It is silent on counties and towns. So cities and villages have the right to compete or to take a franchise. That means, in essence, the city, if we're thinking about kind of electric ownership, we could buy out DT's infrastructure that you see outside your window. That's called traditional municipalization. You have to provide 365 days a year, every year power for everyone in the community, right? Like that, you just basically say goodbye and you buy out that infrastructure and you take it over. You could also, per the Constitution, create a supplemental utility. Now, historically, this has never made sense. As I look out my window, that would be akin to one side of the street having DTE's poles and wires and the other side of the street having Ann Arbor's poles and wires. And so it's never really economically worked. We could always continue the relationship we have. We can push for new laws and policies, and we are, I promise you that. And there may be some other nuanced relationships. Here's the thing. Because of the advancements in distributed energy generation, solar, geothermal. Why are we so focused on buying the poles and the wires? The goal isn't to own distribution. The goal is to generate clean energy that's resilient, reliable, and affordable. Well, because of distributed energy and the technology investments that have been made, you can actually do that now. You don't have to have parallel poles and wires across the street. I can help Larry get solar and I can help council member Radina get geothermal. And together we can find a way to do this so that it's potentially more affordable than what you're paying now, because you're not paying for really big generation far away and long transmission lines followed by step down distribution lines into the community. So there's an alternative way to do this. And you can do this in a way that's actually supplemental to our existing infrastructure. So we began thinking about this about 3 years ago and kind of asking a lot of legal, technical, social, and economic questions. Could this happen? Is it possible? What would it look like, et cetera? And what we came away with was yes, yes, and yes, that we actually could create a supplemental utility. It's legal in Michigan. It's technically possible. It's already being done. I mean, I happen to be sitting in a home that has solar and battery storage right now. If the grid goes down, I'm all set, right? This presentation will continue because I will still continue to generate power on this glorious sunny day. So the economics already work. That's not really the question. And we tested a bunch to see, does the public want it? Would they be interested in it? And the answers came back, yeah, they were intrigued. So this is the idea of the sustainable energy utility. And this is where I'll go a little bit faster. The idea is that, I'll make this explicit, that right now, if you were to tell me you wanted to go solar, I would say, join our Solarize program, and you might, and that would be great. But if you didn't have the capital, or you didn't have the credit score to be able to get financing for solar on your roof, you would probably be denied, right? And if you didn't have $15,000 to put down for that asset, you'd probably be denied, right? Or a good enough credit score, or whatever it is the market says. Or if you happen to be my neighbors and have beautiful shade trees, solar wouldn't make sense for you because you wouldn't have the payback, right? The trees are blocking it too much of the year, and we don't want to take those trees down because of the wonderful value that they're already providing, like stormwater value. So that creates this disincentive for investment. The idea of the SEU is that it's actually a municipal utility that pays for that solar up front. We put, if this is authorized, we would be able opt in. You would tell me you want to participate. We could install solar or geothermal or do energy efficiency in your home. You would not pay the upfront capital. You would pay your bill like you do today, and you'd be charged per unit of energy that you use from that solar system. So it takes away this need for upfront capital, meaning it's a way more equitable way to ensure everyone has access should they want it. It is opt-in. It is 100% optional. Only those who take service pay for service. So this is not a new tax, right? This is a utility that you have to take service from in order to pay for it. The way it's been envisioned is it would start with solar and energy storage or battery storage systems, as well as energy efficiency support that could be paid back through on-bill finance. Energy efficiency is one where you would be paying towards that cost. You would be paying it down over time, and then you'd reap the benefits once it's paid for. The second phase of the SEU is once we have enough people in a certain concentration adopting the SEU, you can start to do small scale distribution, meaning wires between houses. So that in our case, I can generate more solar than we use by nature of the way our roof is structured, whereas our neighbor, as we mentioned, can't. And so we could over generate, have a wire between us, and I could share our power with them. So we could actually have community solar. We could be sharing electrons, literally sharing the electrons without having big distribution. We have very small or micro grid distribution taking place. So those are some of the ideas. These slides will unpack them more. I do want to be clear. We've done multiple studies. We just finished an economic study, a very detailed, and we tried to be as intentional and conservative as we could be to understand what the economics would look like if we launched the SEU. And I want to share with you, we knew it had to be cost competitive with what you can get on the marketplace. It is. What we saw is we can do solar for about 16 cents all in with all costs. That, again, is assuming we don't get discounts on pricing because we're buying volume. It's assuming we kind of get market rate, right? So we needed to know that if nothing falls into place, can it still work? And the answer is it could. To give you a sense, our current rates are about 19 cents. So you could actually get a savings by installing solar through the SEU. That's great. We knew, however, that batteries, energy storage systems don't have the same economics, but they have a lot of really good economics. So what we compared it to was generators. We said, well, a lot of people think about batteries to make sure that they can still have power when the grid goes down. That's what a generator is. How does it compare to a generator? The answer is it's cheaper than a generator. And it provides more value than that. A battery means that I'm not using power tonight from the grid. My battery is full. Tonight, if I use anything when the sun sets, I'm pulling from the battery. I'm still not paying, right? So there's additional value you get by having a battery in the system, especially if you're thinking about a generator. A battery is a way better thing to be thinking about. And I'm happy to take that offline. And then we knew what the variable that was going to kind of determine a lot of this is how we financed it. So there are two key variables that have to fall into place for the SEU to make economic sense. The first is we have to have decent adoption rate. To come out the gate, we probably need about 20 megawatts of folks subscribed. So that could actually be one big contract from the University of Michigan. It could be a few commercial contracts, or it could be lots of residential contracts, or any combination thereof. You need to have certain economics because you still have to have staff. Right? We still have to have a billing system. One person paying for all of that is not feasible. But having 100 people, the prices drop for everybody, right? So it's an economy of scale. The second is the cost of money. If we can get financing rates that are 5% or lower, we're good to rock. If something happens in the marketplace and interest rates pop to 10%, it's not going to be economical. So we're trying to be really transparent, and we have a lot of interest from different firms, nonprofits, and others who want to invest in the SEU. So you can find all of this online. If you're intrigued enough by it, we actually are starting a wait list to understand what demand looks like, because that is an important factor in launching. But there's a lot of technical information on our website. So let's get to the punchline. This is what you're going to see on the ballot. This is the exact ballot language approved by the Attorney General about a month ago. I'm going to just read this for funsies to you, and then I'm going to fast forward and end our time together. The City of Ann Arbor proposes to create within its boundaries an opt-in, publicly owned sustainable energy utility to supply, generate, transmit, distribute, and store electricity, heat, cooling, light, and power solely from renewable sources and provide energy-related services. The SEU could, for example, provide individual or networked rooftop solar systems, heat pumps, geothermal systems, or batteries to customers to supplement existing utility services. The SEU will be fee-based. This proposal does not authorize new taxes. Shall the charter be amended to authorize the city to establish, construct, own, and operate an opt-in sustainable energy utility? Let's just pause with a few keywords. One, opt-in. I've said this before. No one is required to take service. You have to opt in to the SEU, right? So this is completely optional. If you are excited about it, come on in. If you hate the idea, don't worry. That's fine. Second, only renewable energy. There is no ability in this authorizing language for us to go procure fossil gas and use it to power the system. We have to focus on renewable energy for this work in alignment with 820 and the goals we have. I'll point out third, energy-related services speaks to energy efficiency, beneficial electrification like appliance replacements or electrical upgrades that may be needed to take advantage of some of the other technologies. Supplemental. This is not a replacement. This is not a buyout of our existing utility. This is in addition to, right? And last, fee-based. Another way to say this is rate-based. Only those who take service pay for the service they take. So if my neighbor doesn't opt in, they don't pay a thing. If I opt in, I pay only for the services I take. That may just be energy efficiency. That may be more solar on my roof. Whatever I take, I pay for, but whatever I don't, I don't. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So SEU again will be on the ballot. In these slides, you're going to see examples of how they work for a home that already has solar, or a home that can't get solar, for rentals and commercial properties. And then it'll end with this, our website, where you can see way more than you probably want to see. There's videos, there's fact sheets, there's the actual modeling and the technical reports. You can dive into the economics and actually see how we're doing rate making or thinking about doing rate making. There's a little bit of information about fundraising work that we're doing, but just want to share with you, we're trying to be as transparent as possible. Right now it is fact-based, and you are important stakeholders. People trust you as members of a board in the city of Ann Arbor. So I really wanted to make sure you had at least a little bit of information about the sustainable energy utility, but more importantly, knew where to go if you want more information, or if a resident talks to you, or someone talks to you in synagogue, or your house of worship, or at the grocery store, where you can direct them to go. Because we just want to make sure people have factual information in November so they can decide whatever they're going to decide. But we just want it to be fact-based. So with that, I'll stop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Missy. That was a ton of very interesting information. And so now I'd like to open up the floor to any questions that our commissioners may have. And we will do the normal, raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Please go ahead, Commissioner Bush.
Great, thank you. And thanks, Missy, for the really detailed presentation. Maybe I'll jump back to the parks piece first, just to ask a quick question there. I love kind of the opportunities that you guys are already seeing to think about, grant funding, co-fundraising to support a lot of these efforts that really align for both parks and OSI. I'm curious in those, you mentioned a lot of kind of the solar, the EV chargers, a lot of the technology. Curious how you're thinking about the landscape itself as a way to sink carbon, or even, I know A20 is a little bit more around mitigation than adaptation. But whether you see opportunities there, whether it's urban heat or otherwise, for places where the parks could play a role in what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I do want to say A20 is mitigation and adaptation, and we frame it as resilience, because I think the intersection of that is really critical. I'm sometimes jealous of my colleagues who just do one. We can't in practice, right? Every investment we make, we're thinking about how they intersect on an adaptation and mitigation side. So a few things I didn't talk about are things like certainly the electrification of the fleet that we have, including our landscaping equipment, and how we're thinking about that transition, and the native plantings that we're doing, the maintenance of the natural systems. We work very closely with NAP to maintain infrastructure, to do invasives removal, to think about pollinator habitats. We also work with the Greenbelt, and we've done some assessments of soil carbon sequestration that happens within the Greenbelt system, so we can really understand the best way to manage those different sites and to help promote our farmers with maintaining that infrastructure. So we're both growing food that's really helpful, but also sequestering carbon in that infrastructure itself. So I'm sure there's way more ideas, and I can't wait to hear them, because I bet you have a lot of really good ones, but I do apologize. I was more energy centered today. Gosh, one of the grants we recently won that goes to council, hello council members, we're excited that you're going to accept that, is a USDA grant looking at tree planting throughout the system in under canopied areas, but also exploring, could the city start its own nursery? And if we did, could we have native plantings that we can actually share both in our park system, but also with our residents, right? To expand access to more native species, especially as what historically has been native may not actually be smart to grow anymore, given shifting climatic zones. And so really struggling with that tension. Perhaps more than you wanted, Commissioner Bush, so apologies.
No, thanks, that's helpful.
Commissioner Kraut, please go ahead.
Thank you. Missy, I had two questions. I'll just put them both out there. One's about the parks, one's about the SEU, SEO.
Oh, SEU, you got it.
SEU. Okay. So as far as the parks, I think 2 years ago we had a presentation about the solar and electrification in the parks. I got the impression that there was not going to be stuff everywhere because some things were just much easier to do and were going to be implemented first. And so then the way you're talking, I'm like, well, it sounds like they're doing everything. So first question, I'll put them both out there. Maybe you could talk about that. And then with the SEU, I know I personally have solar and a battery myself, but I was limited by by our past electric use, which was not that high. So our roof could hold a lot more panels than we currently have. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering if you can talk about, are the rules different than with the SEU? So those are my two questions.
Great questions. To your first, we've been strategic working with parks about where we're deploying first, and it's largely where we have sites with significant energy usage. And in truth, we've also been somewhat successful in securing grant funding. So one project I'll share, we got $2.5 million from Congresswoman Dingell to help expand solar, and we are designing at Bicentennial Park. And we are designing that system for current use, which honestly isn't very high. But once we put a splash pad in, it's going to be a lot higher. And what if we put EV charging in? And what if we talk about maybe over time some infrastructure for camps down there? You know, that's going to increase load. So we're trying to be really strategic and also candidly a little opportunistic and where we can get resources to expand the values. So there is strategy that we talk a lot about behind the scenes, but it is responsive to the moment we're in. And one thing I think about in this landscape, and I'll give Administrator Mahoney credit, I think I shared this with council the other night. He told us on the executive team, you know, right now is a once in a generation opportunity for funding and investment from our federal government to do, in particular, sustainability work. We've never seen this much money at all. And I don't know what's going to happen after November. And so he's telling us run, right, for everything we can possibly access and get. And so you're going to see a lot of us thinking very, very purposely and intentionally about maybe we needed another 18 months before we'd feel like it was fully designed and fully ready, but we might go ask for it a little bit early in this process because of the moment we're in. So I'm sure it probably feels a little overwhelming, but there is a lot of intentionality behind what we're doing. To your second, it's a great question. So one thing I guess I'll start by framing that utilities set utility policy. And so DTE, our investor-owned utility, has the policy that you can't generate more than 110% of what you use. So if you, and I'll just use my case, we are electrifying. We have one more appliance to go. We have to get a furnace out and we've got to go, that's not true. We also have a gas fireplace, but our big appliance left. But that meant when we did our solar, we didn't have our water heater switched out. I hadn't switched to a heat pump joint washer and dryer unit. So our usage looked low, right, in that case. And so we were limited by the sizing of what we could do in that system. The sustainable energy utility to function needs a lot of generation, right? So if we're a utility, if authorized by the voters, we don't have to set a max. Now, we do want to be sensitive to you and the rates you pay. So we need to do personal modeling for you in that case, Commissioner Kraut, and understand how much are you using now and how do we not make it so that that solar is generating far more than you would use, such that you're selling it back to DTE at 7 cents and you're paying the SEU 16 cents. That's not good economics either. But if we can get that battery to take a bunch of it, the economics may work for you. Or if your neighbor wants to subscribe to the SEU and we can connect you, your overgeneration could go to them and the economics then work across two systems. So that's a utility policy. And in fact, the SEU leans in heavily to generating as much as economically makes sense because our goal is 100% renewable being generated here in the community. Great question.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bush.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to follow up on that previous question. So also a home with solar and a battery. Just curious, we're like 2 for 2 on the questions.
I know.
Curious, kind of what you just mentioned, right? So if you opt into the SEU, are you fully opting out of DTE or are you essentially carrying both
Yeah, you're carrying both.
utilities.
You'll get two
Okay.
bills. The way the engineering works is first in is the SEU. So
Okay.
in your case, I'm going to make an assumption that you probably don't need more solar on your roof, but what you may really want to do is get some help financing that appliance replacement that you've been thinking about, or a furnace breaks and you want to go to a cold climate air source heat pump, or you need more insulation. The SEU can help you there. Or you got an electric vehicle and you want another battery, the SEU could help you there. So you would only be paying for what you're taking service for. The idea, and it is not first generation, this will be a while in the making. The idea though would be there will be times that you overgenerate even right now with your system. And if you're not grandfathered into net metering, you are getting very little for anything you send back to the grid compared to what you're paying from the grid. The SEU would buy that from you though. Like we would take those electrons and we would pay you net metering rates in order to pass that on to someone else, because that's what we actually want. So the economics will work in your favor to actually generate. You don't want to overgenerate too much, but to maximize the potential that you actually have.
No, that's really helpful. I think I was just wanting to understand too, like, in some sense, you may be paying less, but let's say you're a more limited income household, you'd be paying still for your DTE transmission, even if maybe you're taking
Your $9, like you're stable. Yeah,
Okay.
like we pay today. I assume we're still, so you would still have two connections. An alternative way to think about this is from a resilience perspective. Big centralized systems are vulnerable. We know that. Our grid goes down, right? I don't think anyone here is surprised to hear that. If you're shocked, I would like to know where you live in Ann Arbor. Most of us lose power frequently. Big centralized systems go down. A tree goes down, a squirrel chews on a wire, and we lose through a whole circuit, right? That happens. But if you have your own generation, you have some redundancy and resilience when you have that battery associated with it. So the idea of the SEU is not initially at all a one-for-one replacement. It's not saying you're out of DT. It's saying first in is the SEU, then DT comes in. If DT drops, you still have the SEU. Right. So you may not have 100. I think in most cases, you're not, if we're really honest, going to have 100% of your energy use. But the idea is you have critical load. So if your critical load's 30%, you need to power medical devices, you still can do that. You don't lose your refrigerator. You don't lose hundreds of dollars, right, of groceries. You can at least maintain that infrastructure. So it is more resilient. And we talk to DT about this a lot. The thing we know in Ann Arbor is our grid is old. For our electrical fans, we have a 4.8 kV system. That is not a very powerful system. That is not a system that can handle the amount of electrification that we're going through as a community. They're going to need to make hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in investments. And they've been very vocal about that. The SEU can actually take some of that strain off because it's letting us generate in the community without having to distribute it over those wires that aren't capable of taking it anyway. And so it actually can be a supplement. And we're in conversation with them about how we can really lean into that portion of the work, that we're not, in some ways it is a competition. We're not naive to that, right? That people will be interested in this. And it can also be a supplement and it can be useful. How do we use it to be useful to that infrastructure so that we can actually demonstrate what a utility of the future looks like and how we can be in collaboration as opposed to competition. So a girl can dream, and I keep working with them to try to make that happen.
I have a question about the geothermal in the parks, using the parks for geothermal. How does that affect park access? I know that if everything's working well, it's underground, and you might not even know that it's down there. If maintenance is required, that kind of thing, what does that do to folks' access to the parks?
Good question. So access on the front end for installation will be disrupted, right? We'll have to come in and actually do the boring, put in the wells, et cetera. But if we're talking about a community system, you built redundancy into that system so that if a well fails, you abandon the well. I mean, you cap it. You don't have to go in and tear up much infrastructure because we're talking about a neighborhood system that's quite big, and we're having different well fields to have that redundancy because, things do break in the system. So it is not impossible that there will be disruption, but it is intentionally being designed for minimal disruption, mostly on the front end of the system installation that would take place. We are also looking at undergrounding our pump house or a little pump station. They don't need much. So that would be something where you could imagine there's a historical manhole, right? That you would go in and it would be locked in access. So we'd have to have that somewhere on the site. But doing this, if it's an SEU, it's a community, I mean, it's a public utility. It's a utility like the city has. So we have a lot more flexibility putting that in parks or rights of way or the street. So we're looking at, I'm not going to make that sound easy. There's a lot in your street. There's a lot of competition in the street, but we have more options than if we were a private utility, pretty constrained by where we could put infrastructure.
Are there other neighborhoods that you're looking at for geothermal?
Might be a better question to say, are there other neighborhoods I'm not looking at for geothermal at the moment? Yeah, we are doing a citywide study of where we could deploy geothermal, identifying kind of spider networks. You could imagine our schools, right, are nestled in neighborhoods. Our parks are often nestled in neighborhoods. So how can we spider out from those institutions? And what would that look like? What's ideal thermal load? How many wells could we get in? And what kind of tonnage could that carry for heating and cooling in certain areas? So council approved a few months ago a contract with Stantec to do a kind of deeper technical study of where geothermal might be possible. But we are actively, we've wanted, I think you probably noticed, we won a DOE grant to design this network geothermal system in Bryant. End of September, we submit for $10 million to start implementing. So fingers crossed, we will have, it will manifest the future I want. We will have funding and we will be deploying our first network geothermal grant in the city.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the commission?
Not a question, but just a thank you to Missy for being here. As she gave us a lot of praise in parks, but it is a pleasure to work with her and her staff to meet the goals that both parks and OSI and the city have. We have a lot of space, and there's a lot of people who want to utilize our space for their programs within the city. And the nice thing with OSI is they typically come with A, some funding, B, a support of something that we're trying to do within our park system, and understanding that it's not just getting things in the ground, but making sure that we have things that sustain and work for us moving forward. So it is always a pleasure. Our meetings with Missy is always a highlight of my month. And so I just wanted to say thank you as we end this presentation and discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Missy, and hope to hear from you again in the future.
Absolutely. Happy sunny day, everybody.
All right, thank you. Okay. We have one more presentation this afternoon, and that is on the upcoming Parks Millage, and Josh will be talking about that.
That's good. It is, as I mentioned, this is a very informational meeting with a couple of ballots coming up. It was important. I had talked with Missy earlier in the spring about coming and giving an update about the relationship between OSI and parks. And we had scheduled it for this date, and then we determined that it was a good opportunity to share about the SEU as well. So we'll turn to the other ballot that is from the city this fall, which is much more important to me and our livelihood in parks. But I'll kind of go over kind of a simple presentation. Most of this you will have already heard, but just to be aware, we'll put it out there so people can see it as well. So I will hopefully have the same amount of. Okay. All right. Can everyone see my screen? All right. So I will be speaking about the Parks Maintenance and Capital Improvement Millage. This is the continuation of a millage that has been going on for a period of time, but it is what basically is about 40% of our budget. So it's a pretty significant component to our park system. What we'll be speaking about today is kind of the current millage specifics. How do we utilize the millage within parks, and what does it mean? And then what is the millage future? What will change about the millage, and what will it support moving forward? Just a little history about the Parks Millage. The city has supported a Parks Millage since 1983. We've been extremely fortunate to have that support. Actually, between 83 and 2006, there were 2 Parks Millages. And during a process in 2006, they worked to combine those 2 millages into one. which has been the millage that we have had since 2006. The rate is 1.1, which over time kind of reduces a little bit because of the Headley Act. But that is the rate that we are at. So we're slightly at about 1.075 right now. So it goes down a little bit. In 2011, the administrative policies that kind of dictate how we use the millage and how we spend the millage were updated. They have worked very well for us for the last 13 years. They kind of keep us, give us flexibility on how we spend, but we are continuing to look to use that as we move forward. The millage was renewed in 2012 and again in 2018, and the community and our community supported the millage very highly. And this year is the final year of the current millage. So what are the specifics around the millage? As I mentioned, it is a 1.1 mil. Like I said, with the Headley Act reducing that down a little bit, we have not seen a decrease in the amount of money that has come in because of the millage. So in FY25, we're anticipating $7.8 million. In 2018, I think it was $6.5 million that we expected to get in when we renewed this in 2018. So we continue to see that increase because of property values as well as more people coming into the community. The average that somebody pays is about $190 on an average home of taxable value home, which, if you think about it, is about $1.11 per park that somebody pays over the course of the year. We are required to spend between 60% and 80% of the millage funds on park maintenance activities. And I'll speak to what that means here shortly. And the remaining 20 to 40% is designed for city park capital improvements, so large scale improvements on that. We are typically at about 70-30, just over the course of the millage, based on what we have going in. And one of the key things with the millage is it does not cover all of our park maintenance or our capital improvement costs. Some things cannot be paid out of the millage, like mowing, which is a key maintenance component to our parks, as well as we have a lot of incoming capital improvements that get paid out of the general fund or through support that we receive from other funding. Just to understand where the money goes to, again, $7.5 million. 3.1 million goes to park and facility maintenance. So that's the ongoing and routine maintenance that take place in our 163 parks and our 15 facilities. 1.1 million goes to natural area preservation. That is the work that is done in our natural areas. That I'll speak to here in a little bit. Volunteerism is about $600,000, which is our Give 365 program, which focuses on beautification and events in our manicured or non-natural area parks, as well as some other things. Park forestry is about $550,000 from a budgeted standpoint. That is usually lower based on the work that has to be done. And the remaining is about $2.5 million that is designed for capital project planning and construction. So the big projects that we do and that we talk about in front of PAC all the time, that's where that money kind of comes from. That is the biggest variance number. It increases based on how much we pay our staff in our park and facility maintenance, how many things that go along. But there's a tendency to be a contingency in there that we kind of determine our projects with. So what saw that dollar amount, what does it actually support and what does that mean on a day-to-day basis? Really long list of things that park maintenance does, and Scott or Victor will tell you that doesn't touch on all of it. But it is really what keeps our facilities kind of going on a day-to-day basis. Whether it is a playground inspections to ensure that they're safe, whether it is trail maintenance or pathways, when we have pool and ice rink equipment that needs to be maintained and repaired to ensure that we can have ice in September and October at vets, or have a clean pool during the summer at Buer, that gets paid out of those because those are ongoing expenses. Dock repairs at the liveries, replacing grills and benches, and drinking fountains in our parks. Just all the things that you see that kind of get looked at and that need to be fixed from time to time. It comes out of that side of it, as well as painting, which is there's a lot more painting that goes on than we need. Natural area preservation. Of our 2,200 acres, 1,400 of them are natural areas. NAP's job is to protect and restore Ann Arbor's natural areas and to foster an environmental ethic within the community. We do this through a wide range of stewardship activities, both from a staff point of view as well as volunteers, from inventorying to restoring to outreach. To everyone's favorite part of NAP is the prescribed burn program, where we get to go out and put things on fire and put it out safely to ensure that we take care of removing invasive species and keeping our biodiversity high. NAP is intended to be fully funded out of the parks millage. There is no general fund associated with it. As was approved last night by council, there's about a $375,000 grant that was received that will help with stewardship over the next 4 years. But again, NAP is paid for out of the parks millage. Volunteerism, give 365. We did such a good job with NAP reaching out and finding volunteers to help us do more work in our park system that about 15 years ago, Give was created to do the same thing in our facilities, in our playgrounds, in our open spaces in our park system. Their activities include everything from park beautification to special events. The Visit Every Park program, Adopt a Park is managed through Give. It is year-round, all ages, volunteer opportunities, everything from splash days at facilities to putting up lights at the market to river trips and cleaning up trash out of the river on a daily basis. So again, Give 365 is also funded completely out of the millage, except when we find great ways to get grants for them. And then capital projects. Again, long list of a lot of things that we do, but it is the core of what people see happening in our park system. Missy spoke about the solar panels that were been provided at our facilities. Those are things that go into it. We have new maintenance that goes into it. The universal access playgrounds tend to be a little bit higher and more expensive, so they fall into the capital process. Game courts, when we have to redo basketball courts or tennis courts or pickleball courts, those fall into this. New playgrounds or renovations of playgrounds all fall into that. So really, the big things that we need to do, and I haven't spoken about the biggest ones of Gallup Bridge, the Barton to Bandamere Tunnel, West Park Bandshell, all of those things are really driven by funding from the millage that we spend years tucking money away to ensure that those big projects can be done when we need to. So how does the parks millage impact an individual? We talk about the maintenance that's there. I mean, our park system is extremely vast. We have 81 playgrounds that need to be inspected and repaired on an annual basis. We have over 50 miles of pathways, 31 tennis and pickleball courts. We have a lot of facilities that need to be kept up to a certain standard. And this maintenance and the millage provides the funding to work through those so that we can maintain those. And it's easy to think about the facilities that get repaired, but what does that mean? Last year in FY24, we had over 927,000 people visit our facilities to be the best part of their day. Without the millage, we wouldn't have the ability to maintain those facilities for those people to come in. And those are paid or counted people. That doesn't that doesn't talk about all the people that use the border to border, that go into our natural areas, that just go out into a field and play soccer with their kid. Those are ones that we see come through our facilities. And that's 140,000 people visited our pools. Nearly 70,000 people utilize the deliveries through our system. We had 70,000 rounds of golf. 150,000 people used our facilities for a rental or an event within our park system. And day camps was always one of my favorite. We had 1,800 kids come through our day camps last summer, and have a safe place and a safe childcare environment for them during the summer. And then the market is one of our largest visited parks facilities with almost 350,000 people. I put this in because it is really impactful to see the amount of individuals that benefit from our park system and thus from our millage. NAP does an awful lot, and I can't speak enough about the work that they do, but I think one of the things, and we're hearing about sustainability, it's a reminder that maintaining strong natural areas provide many advantages to our community, including the carbon capture, improved water quality, and just in general, whether it's a natural area or just a park in general, the increased physical and mental health that it provides to be out in nature, to be there, and having a very biodiverse system just allows us to really be healthy, both as a community and as individuals. Within volunteerism, my comma's off. We had 19,000, not one. We have about 19,000 hours between Give and NAP in FY24, and over about 4,000 different volunteers that came through our system. A lot of people get out, they find their way to help the community, to help themselves through the stewardship and the volunteer opportunities that Give and NAP provide. And our capital projects, what does that mean? It's more accessibility, whether it's our trails, whether it's our playgrounds. Those are the projects that we're putting on. Safer pools. One of the things we did since 2008 is add UV filtration at all of our pools to ensure that if something breaks out in our pool, we're a little bit safer. We had that a couple years ago. New courts, whether they're basketball, tennis, or pickleball, just getting people more ways to get out and utilize our facilities. Updating or adding new playgrounds. Inclusivity, we've added gender neutral stalls at a number of our outdoor facilities to ensure that people feel comfortable coming to our facilities, and increased activities. A skate park lighting allows more people to use a facility beyond normal hours. And all of these things that I spoke about have been paid for through our parks millage and through our capital component of that. One of the big things is, again, we don't get it. The millage doesn't cover everything. It doesn't cover what we need to do with it. And in looking back, and just since 2018, we've been able to leverage our millage funding to bring in over $7.5 million in outside funding through ARPA, through the Washtenaw County, through MDNR, through the U.S. Forest Service. Those are the big ones. We also have smaller ones that we get on a regular basis, but having that funding really allows us to work hard to identify other sources of funding to help us make our dreams a reality. What will passing the A2 Parks millage mean? As this group is aware, I mean, we just completed the ADA study that's identified $19 million of needed improvements in the next 30 years. We are currently working on a capital assessment study that is going to identify even more improvements that need to come along. Those are the big projects that we will work to find outside funding for, that will utilize the $2.5 million within the millage too. But those are the exciting things that go on. We have 12 playgrounds that are nearing their 30-year end of life span that will need to be replaced in the next 5 to 7 years. recreation trends are different today than they were 20 years ago. We are seeing more and more needs for things like pickleball, water spaces, accessibility, all of those type of things. As we begin to move towards a 21st century park system, we're going to need to have funding available to support with that. Sustainability will not only ensure that we use less energy, we create fewer hot zones, but also that we have opportunities to find different funding through our operations based on that. And just again, the importance of parks on individual and communities' well-being. People move to spaces because of quality park system. They get outside to make themselves feel better. And having a space and having park system that do that is really important to support that. And the millage will ensure that we can continue to do those type of things for our community. Similar to previously, I will go through the very exciting, how do I do this? I can't see my top part. This is the problem. I'll read it out. It's going to be read on that. There's Ann Arbor City Charter Amendment authorizing tax for parks, maintenance, and capital improvements. An Ann Arbor City Charter Amendment. Now that's duplicated. I apologize. I'll correct that. Shall the charter be amended to authorize a tax up to 1.1 mils for park maintenance and capital improvements for 2025 through 2044 to replace the previously authorized tax for parks maintenance and capital improvements for 2019 through 2024, which will raise in the first year of the levy an estimated revenue of $8.5 million. In accordance with state law, a portion of the millage may be subject to capture by the Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority and the Washtenaw County Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. Yes or no? Someone provided this quote that I thought was appropriate as we speak about the millage. Living in Ann Arbor, we are all fortunate to have so many parks, natural areas, and recreation facilities to choose from, and each with unique and diverse offerings. There is really a park for every interest here. Thank you for supporting the parks. More information can be found at that website, and I will stop sharing and see if anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Josh. A lot of great information there. And will you be sharing that presentation with us?
Yep, I will share it with you just as has been. And there's a little bit of work in progress on it. You know, we're continuing to look at it was important to get the content to all of you today. We may look at making it a little bit prettier, a little bit more aesthetic, but content is the priority. So,
yeah, I always find it helpful to have that kind of information sort of at my fingertips when my neighbors ask me about our park system. Yep. Other questions for Josh regarding the millage? All right. Well, thank you once again. But don't go anywhere because because next up on our agenda is reports, and so we will start with the manager's report.
Yep, I know we have a couple more things to do, so I'll be relatively brief. Barton to Bandamere, the trail through the Barton Nature Area has opened up. It also has a new Great Oak Nature Playground that was created because of the dying oak tree was replaced to make a natural playground there. That is open as well. And the contracts for the Barton Bandamere pedestrian tunnel have been approved by City Council. So we'll be moving forward to get that executed so we can create the next phase. Gallup Bridge continues to be worked on. We're getting it moved along as quickly as possible. Once the decking and guardrails are complete, we're going to be looking to add a temporary pedestrian detour route to allow access across the bridge in a safe manner, which is safety is the priority in crossing that bridge. And so we're working hard with the contractor to get that done. You may have seen in the Gov Delivery, but we're going to be hosting 3 pop-up events over the next couple of weeks. to provide information mainly about our capital assessment study that is kicking off now. These will be taking place very soon. Two of them are tomorrow. One is at the farmers market from 8 to noon, and the other one is at Fuller Pool from 2 to 5 p.m. And we're just going to be out there talking with the community, letting them know about the assessment, why we're doing it, what we're looking for, and what will be taking place. And the third one will be on Monday, August 26th from 2 to 6 p.m. at West Park. In addition to speaking about the capital assessment study, we'll also be sharing information about the first round of the public engagement about West Park, as well as the kind of the next steps of the projects, and as with any of these, answering questions that people have about parks. So I will make sure to send those dates out when I send the email about with the other information. But if you're able to stop by, please do. But it's exciting. Last thing I have. With Labor Day approaching, the end of summer is coming quickly. We will be having a tiered closing of the pools. So vets will be closing after August 25th, followed by Bure on September 3rd, and then Fuller will remain open until September 15th. This is a big part of this is staffing. As we lose a lot of staff to colleges and different things. So we try to make sure that we can provide good options there. Delivery will start their fall schedule after Labor Day. And with all of these closing means that we will be turning around and opening up the Veterans Ice Arena and Mac Pool in September to turn on to that season. So that is my update.
Any questions for Josh? Seeing none. All right. We next have committees. I think a RAC comes to mind. Hannah, is there anything to report?
So RAC has not met since we last had a PAC meeting, but I did just want to mention that registration is open for fall programs and team sports and before and after school care, you name it. So if you're interested in those, online registration is open.
Thank you. I think Environmental Commission is our other one, and we met last month. We had a working session to establish our priorities for the biodiversity, circular economy, and water quality subcommittee. That's about all to report there. I don't think we have any other committees at the moment. All right, so that brings us to the second public comment period. And once again, if you'd like to speak at public comment, please follow the instructions to raise your hand and indicate that you would like to speak. We allow 3 minutes per speaker. We don't respond in the moment to speakers, but we appreciate you taking the time to call and share your thoughts with us. Do we have any callers on the line?
No, we do not.
No, we don't. All right. We have communications in our packet. And then we have one more item on our agenda today, which is a closed session. So in order to go into closed session, we need to have a motion to do so. So would anyone care to move that we go into closed session? I see Ruth, second by Tisha. And so what we do here is we leave this meeting. I think we have a second link that Josh emailed out yesterday, and we will all reconvene there. And then we will come back to this meeting when this closed session is done. So everybody should have that link. If you don't,
Just as people are dropping off, we have to vote to go into closed session.
oh, I'm sorry. I asked the session. Yes, second, and then I forgot to vote. Thank you. Yes. All in favor of going into closed session, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. All right, so we can now go in there, and please get in touch if you don't have the link. Can I have a motion to return to open session? Thank you, Vince. Second, Ruth. All in favor of returning to open session, please say aye or raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And all right, so that concludes the closed session. We're back to open session and we've covered all of our agenda items. And so at this point, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for the meeting this month, and we'll see you all in September.